The loudest voice in the room is rarely the one in control. The one who commands the room is the one who sits quietly, watches everything, and pours her energy inward. Focus on yourself and let the silence speak volumes. Your energy is not limitless. It is a sacred currency, more valuable than time, more precious than gold, and once spent, it cannot be returned in the same form. Every thought you entertain, every person you chase, every situation you obsess over takes a portion of your soul's wealth. And if you're not mindful, you'll wake up spiritually bankrupt, having invested everything in people, places, and problems that gave you no return. You must begin to treat your energy like a divine resource, not a discount giveaway for the ungrateful or the unaware. You see, the world has conditioned many to believe that being available means being worthy, that being constantly responsive equals value, but that's not truth. That's depletion wrapped in performance. You cannot serve everyone and save yourself. You cannot pour endlessly without becoming hollow. You cannot keep offering pieces of your peace and expect to remain whole. There comes a moment when you must redirect the flow, a moment when you stop spending energy trying to prove, trying to please, trying to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding you. Instead, spend it inward. Spend it tending to the parts of yourself that have waited patiently while you gave everything away. Spend it healing the bruises you ignored while trying to be strong for others. Spend it watering your inner garden, pulling out the weeds of self-doubt and planting seeds of self-respect. Spend it sitting with your own silence so you can hear the sound of your soul again. The part of you that is untouched by validation, unfazed by rejection, unbothered by noise. When you start investing inward, you begin to see differently. You begin to discern who deserves access and who was simply taking advantage of your open door. You begin to protect your peace the way royalty guards their palace. You begin to ask not, who needs me right now? But what do I need right now to be whole, to be clear, to be aligned? Because you finally realize that you are your own responsibility, that your energy, once scattered, must be gathered, that your light, once dimmed to make others comfortable, must be turned back on, not for show, but for soul. And let this be known. Investing inward doesn't mean you're selfish. It means you're finally wise. It means you've learned that peace doesn't chase chaos, that love doesn't beg to be seen, that wholeness doesn't come from being everything to everyone, but from being everything to yourself first. You don't need to exhaust yourself trying to fix things that were never yours to carry. You don't need to answer every call, entertain every message, or explain your silence. You are allowed to reclaim your energy from every space that drained you and pour it back into the vessel that matters most. True growth does not announce itself with trumpets. It does not seek permission to evolve. It happens slowly, quietly, often invisibly to those who are not paying attention. It does not thrive in the noise of performance or in the glare of constant validation. It takes root in stillness, in solitude, in spaces where no one is watching and no one is clapping. The most profound transformation begins not in the center of the crowd, but in the corners where silence holds you and demands your presence with yourself. We've been conditioned to believe that progress must be loud to be real, that success must be seen to be validated, but the soul doesn't grow under the pressure of public opinion. It grows when the spotlight fades and you are left alone with your choices, your truths, your shadows. It grows when you stop moving to be noticed and start stilling yourself to be known. In the quiet, you are not performing, you are purifying. You are not seeking applause, you are seeking alignment. In the crowd, it's easy to get lost, easy to become an echo of what others want to hear, easy to dress up your pain in smiles and pretend that healing is a straight line. But in the quiet, there is nowhere to hide. It is there where you face the mirror, not the one on your wall, but the one in your soul. And what you do in that mirror when no one is watching, that is where growth lives. That is where old beliefs are questioned, where new truths are born, and where you finally stop shrinking to fit into places your spirit has already outgrown. Quiet forces you to listen to your breath, to your fears, to your dreams, the ones you buried under survival and silence. And in that listening, you begin to shed. You begin to soften and strengthen all at once. You begin to release the pressure to be perfect and instead become present. The quiet becomes your teacher, your altar, your medicine. It becomes the space where your roots deepen, even when nothing seems to be blooming above the surface. The crowd may offer attention, but it rarely offers truth. The crowd may praise your mask, but it doesn't see your soul. Real growth doesn't need to be seen, it needs to be respected. And that respect begins with yourself when you choose stillness over stimulation, introspection over performance, intention over impulse. In the quiet, you don't just hear your voice, you remember it. You don't just sit with your thoughts, you sift through them and choose which ones are still worthy to carry forward. You begin to learn that silence is not emptiness, it's sacred space, space where confusion settles and clarity rises, where wounds are not ignored but finally tended to, where the noise of the world is replaced by the wisdom of the inner voice you had forgotten you had. And the more time you spend in that quiet, the more you become rooted, steady, whole. Growth does not rush, does not shout, does not chase. It unfolds gently in the places where your spirit finally has room to breathe. Silence has been misunderstood by those who equate volume with power and reaction with relevance. But silence, true silence, is not the absence of strength. It is the embodiment of restraint, of discernment, of inner authority. It is not weakness hiding behind quietness. It is wisdom wrapped in dignity. A woman who holds her silence is often the one who holds the most knowledge, the most depth, the most clarity, not because she cannot speak, but because she knows when to speak, if to speak, and why to hold her peace when the world tries to pull her into noise. The loudest voice is not always the one with the most truth, the one who interrupts every conversation, who argues every point, who reacts to every insult. That is not the voice of control. That is the voice of unrest, of instability, of the need to be heard because there is no conviction within. But the one who listens, who watches, who holds her position with grace and lets her actions speak louder than her words, that is the one who holds true power. Because silence is not absence, it is presence without explanation. There is a sacred elegance in not responding to every accusation, not defending every decision, not reacting to every provocation. It means you trust yourself more than you trust their misunderstanding of you. It means you've reached a level of maturity where your inner validation matters more than public approval. Silence becomes your armor, not because you are afraid to speak, but because not everything deserves your voice. Not every battle is worthy of your fire. Not every conflict needs your participation. To be silent when expected to explode is a strength born of soul work. It is the posture of someone who has been through enough storms to know that peace is not won through chaos. It is chosen, it is built, it is preserved, and silence is the tool that safeguards it. When you stop offering your energy to every noise around you, you begin to build a sanctuary within you, a place where stillness is not punishment but protection, a place where you can hear your intuition louder than the world's assumptions. Silence allows you to see clearly, to observe who is truly listening and who is only waiting for their turn to speak, to notice what is said without words, what is meant behind the mask of smiles, what is real beneath the noise of opinions. It sharpens your perception, hones your intuition, and deepens your alignment. You no longer need to convince, to correct, or to compete. You realize that the most powerful responses are often no responses at all. That silence can say what words never could. To carry silence is to carry yourself with discipline. It is to walk away from chaos without slamming the door. To stand in a room full of noise and remain unmoved. To honor your peace more than your pride. It is not about being passive. It is about being poised. It is about knowing that your voice is too valuable to waste on nonsense, that your spirit is too grounded to be stirred by petty things, that your purpose is too sacred to be shared with everyone who demands a piece of it. There is a dangerous lie circulating in the world that to choose yourself is to abandon others, that to pour into your own cup is to neglect the needs of those around you, that to prioritize your healing, your peace, your vision somehow makes you arrogant, cold, or self-absorbed. But that lie is rooted in fear. It is rooted in a world that benefits from you forgetting yourself. Because when you forget yourself, you become easier to control, easier to drain, easier to silence. Self-focus is not a rejection of others. It is a reclamation of your soul. It is the moment you realize that no one is coming to rescue you from your own neglect. That the world will take everything you give until you are empty and then ask why you're so hollow. To focus on yourself is not to close your heart, but to close the doors that lead to your destruction. It is to stop apologizing for needing solitude. It is to stop explaining why you've chosen to no longer sacrifice your well-being for temporary approval. When you turn inward, you begin to hear the quiet cries of your neglected dreams. You start to notice the parts of you that have been screaming beneath the surface, buried under obligations, under expectations, under roles you never asked to play. You begin to realize that you cannot continue to be everything for everyone while being nothing for yourself. And that revelation doesn't make you selfish. It makes you wise. It makes you courageous enough to say, I matter too. Self-focus is a boundary, not a barricade. It is the sacred act of tending to your own soul without guilt, without shame, without the need to justify it. It is the understanding that you cannot give what you do not have. You cannot offer peace if your spirit is in pieces. You cannot truly love if you are running on resentment. And you cannot guide others if you are lost within yourself. Choosing you is not a betrayal. It is the beginning of everything real and lasting. The world will try to convince you that martyrdom is nobility, that breaking yourself into fragments for the sake of others is love. But true love includes you. It honors you. It protects you, even from your own patterns of overextending and overgiving. When you focus on yourself, you begin to elevate your standards. Not just for others, but for how you treat you. You stop accepting crumbs and calling it connection. You stop abandoning yourself to feel temporarily needed. You reclaim your time. You reclaim your mind. You return to the rhythm of your own heartbeat, your own breath, your own voice. You begin to walk not in the footsteps of who others say you should be, but in the light of who you already are when you are fully present with yourself. Self-focus is not isolation, it's alignment. It's the sacred decision to sit with your shadows, to nurture your light, to rebuild your inner world until your outer world must adjust in response. It is not selfish to choose healing over pleasing. It is not selfish to say no to energy that leaves you depleted. It is not selfish to walk away from what you've outgrown in order to walk into what you're becoming. That is not selfishness. That is self-respect. That is spiritual maturity. That is the act of honoring the divine within you that has been waiting patiently for your attention, your love, your focus. There comes a point in your journey when words no longer suffice, when trying to explain who you are, what you've chosen, And why you've outgrown certain spaces becomes an exhausting performance meant to soothe the discomfort of others rather than to serve the truth within you. You begin to realize that not everyone is meant to understand your path because it wasn't given to them. It was given to you. And when something is sacred, you no longer feel compelled to defend it. You don't owe an explanation for choosing peace over performance, stillness over chaos, growth over familiarity. You don't have to unpack your evolution to those who only knew the version of you that tolerated what you now reject. Your becoming is not a debate. It is not a court trial where you sit in the witness chair trying to justify why your soul needed more, why your boundaries grew thicker, why your silence became louder than your explanations ever were. Elevation requires separation from the need to be liked, the urge to defend, the addiction to approval. It means moving in a way that is so aligned, so rooted, so guided by the inner compass of your spirit that you don't stop to gather consensus before you act. You simply rise. And in that rising, you stop shrinking yourself to fit into rooms that no longer inspire you. You stop watering down your truth so it goes down easier for those still afraid to taste their own. You cannot elevate and explain at the same time, not without draining yourself in the process, because the higher you rise, the less oxygen there is for conversation that leads nowhere. You learn to conserve your energy not by retreating in weakness, but by advancing in wisdom. You no longer chase understanding, you embody clarity. You no longer beg to be seen. You stand so tall in your light that only the ones meant to meet you there will recognize your glow. People may question your silence, your decisions, your distance, but that's not your burden to carry. You're not here to be understood by everyone. You're here to walk in truth so powerfully that even if no one claps, the heavens still open in acknowledgement. You're not responsible for making others comfortable with your growth. You're responsible for answering the call that keeps waking you in the night, the one that says, rise higher, go deeper, walk forward. Explanation often comes from a place of seeking permission, but elevation is a declaration that you no longer need it. You've passed through fires no one saw. You've healed wounds no one acknowledged. You've held yourself through nights no one knew you survived. And now that you're building something real from within, you do not need to pause and narrate every brick you lay. You just keep building. You just keep climbing. You just keep becoming. Let your transformation speak for itself. Let your silence carry the weight of all the noise you've chosen to no longer entertain. Let your glow be your response, your peace be your answer, your presence be your proof. You are not obligated to make your journey palatable. You are not here to dilute your power for the comfort of those still living in their own confusion. You are here to rise, to align, to embody the fullness of who you are becoming without explanation, without apology, without delay. There is a sacred elegance in a woman who no longer rushes to speak, no longer wastes her breath explaining her worth, no longer breaks her voice trying to convince others of her vision. She has learned the language of silence, the kind that doesn't beg to be heard, but commands attention by its stillness alone. She has discovered that in the spaces between words lies her power, undisturbed and unshaken. Silence is not her absence, it is her presence multiplied. The woman who masters her silence is not withholding, she is wise. She is not avoiding, she is discerning. She knows that her energy is not for public consumption, that not every thought deserves an audience, that not every insult demands a reply. Her silence is her sanctuary, a sacred space she retreats to not out of fear, but out of clarity. She understands that in silence, she sees clearer, hears deeper, feels truer. While the world runs toward noise and noise chases validation, she walks slowly, deliberately, choosing her peace over performance. When she is silent, she is listening, not just to others, but to herself. She hears the whispers of her intuition. She notices the subtle shifts in energy that words cannot reveal. She sees the truth beneath performance, the motives behind actions, the pain behind anger. She has trained herself to observe without absorbing, to witness without reacting. This is not weakness, it is control. The kind of control that doesn't require force, just stillness. Silence becomes her shield and her sword. In a world that demands constant reaction, she becomes untouchable, not because she doesn't feel, but because she knows not every feeling is meant to be performed. She does not exhaust herself proving what she already knows. She does not dilute her essence to fit in spaces that cannot hold her fullness. She sits back composed, not because she's detached, but because she's connected to something higher, something within. The woman who masters her silence does not need to scream to be heard. Her presence alone changes the temperature of the room. Her calm disarms aggression. Her grace unsettles chaos. She does not match energy. She controls the current. She is grounded not because life has been easy, but because she has chosen not to be moved by what is fleeting. While others are consumed by the urge to respond, she conserves her fire for what truly matters. She no longer feels the need to explain her distance. She is not rude. She is refined. She is not angry. She is awakened. She is not cold. She is calculating. Every moment she chooses silence, she reclaims her narrative, no longer giving away her power through careless words or reactionary emotions. She speaks only when her words build, uplift, or transform. Everything else she leaves to silence. She knows that silence is not absence, it's essence. It is the distillation of all she's endured, survived, and outgrown. It is the proof of her maturity, the evidence of her emotional intelligence, the crown of her inner mastery. The woman who can sit in silence in the face of chaos, in the heat of misunderstanding, in the storm of judgment,